And it was going really well. And then the pandemic hit, and our subscribers went really high because everyone wanted online learning and personal development. So then over time, that business kind of flopped. So we became part of the 90% of startups that actually failed. And I was like, you know what? I want to listen to more founders that have failed, their practical insights. And this is why Nova and Boba was started. So Nova was the name of my EdTech company, and Boba because on the podcast we drink bubble tea. And that's pretty much the story of it. So I'm so excited to have Ambra and Emi here today, and I'm just going to give them some time to introduce themselves. So yeah, thank you, Amber, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here. My name is Ambra. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Juniper. Juniper is an insurtech in reproductive health, but we'll talk about it a little bit more later.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ambra.
Hi everyone, I'm Emmie Faust. I am a mum of 4. I'm an exited founder, so I've sold quite a few businesses. I'm also a Dragon's Den winner. About 20 years ago I went on Dragon's Den and I got the biggest single investment at the time of 200k. And when I sold my businesses, I did various things, but essentially did some consultancy, got a bit ill, decided to change my life, and in the process, a couple of years ago, 2 years ago actually, almost today, I set up a community for female founders, for women entrepreneurs, and we're now 8,000 female founders in the UK, and we support them across 4 pillars. So community, all about getting women together, supporting each other and collaborating. Fundraising, because we need to get more funding going to women. At the moment, only 2% of VC funding goes to all female teams. In fact, it's gone down slightly. Helping founders with business fundamentals, so everything from getting started, like marketing and growth and culture, teams, all that kind of stuff. And then the last one is awareness of female entrepreneurship and celebrating women doing great things. So we just did a big outdoor campaign, which was seen by 2 million people in London and Birmingham, featuring 15 founders from all walks of life, doing all amazing things. And yeah, it's great to be here and lovely to partner.
Thank you, Emmie. I don't know if any of you guys have watched the Nova and Boba podcast before, but how we like to start is about your story, about the problem you faced, and why you built your ventures. So we're going to start with Ambra. I know you had a unique problem before you started Juniper, and I really was keen to hear a bit more.
So I'm not sure how unique it is, because I love to ask the people in this room how many people have polycystic ovaries. So it's the 3 of us in this room already. So I have PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. What that means is that I have some cysts around the follicles in my ovaries, and it's due to a hormonal imbalance, essentially. It doesn't impact my day-to-day life, but I go see my gynecologist once a year. I get my prescription birth control. I'm very happy on it. It works for some people, it doesn't work for other people. But I realized that it wasn't covered by private medical insurance. And so I was born and raised in Italy. I had great healthcare there. When I moved to the UK, I was faced with a whole new health system that I didn't understand. I was very grateful to have a great health insurance. I was working in the big financial institutions, but then the reality hit, and I realized that when I put through the claim, it was £1,000, of which 250 of consultation, £500 of blood tests, and another 250 of ultrasounds. That was declined because it was a pre-existing condition. And so then the next time, I learned my lesson. I went to the NHS. And I had my misadventures there as well. The waiting times right now with the NHS for gynecological visits are 18 weeks. So that's what happened. And I started thinking, why is it that my PCOS is not covered? Yeah. And I thought, I have my dental insurance, and I can see my dentist once a year, and I can get my root canal done, and I got my wisdom tooth done that year as well. But I cannot go see my gynecologist. Yeah. So went up to HR, and HR said, look, we ask for this all the time, but they don't have it. It doesn't exist. They ask for menopause, and it's not covered. They ask for things like endometriosis, family planning is uncovered. So I quit my job and decided to build an insurance company instead.
Yeah. So you aim to solve the problem you were seeing, because it's crazy that a lot of female health related diseases aren't covered.
Yes, absolutely. And, it's not just on the woman's side, but actually we need to bring awareness on the male side as well. Things like erectile dysfunction, early ejaculation, low testosterone. Men don't speak about it oftentimes. But reproductive health is very, very complex and needs a lot of specialism behind it. So sometimes going to your GP won't cut it. What we did there is we say that we are basically the dental insurance of genitals. So everyone has genitals, and you're born with them, hopefully, and you die with them, hopefully. And so we do the whole life cycle of it.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. So we're going to go a little bit later on how you quit your job and actually how you got your first bit of funding and things like that. But I really wanted to talk to you, Emmie. I know you had a problem with females not getting enough investment. So I wanted to know how you started Female Founders Rise and how you eventually invested in 30 female founders.
So two kind of different things, but also slightly related. So basically, when I'd sold my businesses, I had my fourth child and I was doing bits of consultancy. In fact, I had a very short stint at Google, which lasted 6 weeks. And whilst I was there, I sold one of my businesses. And that's not the reason I left. The reason I left is because it wasn't the right job for me. I'm an entrepreneur. I was working in a big corporate, and I realised very early on that I wasn't going to be happy or see my children, because at that time you couldn't do sort of flexible working. But whilst in that 6 weeks, I sold one of my businesses and made some money from that, which meant that I didn't need to be working in a job that I definitely didn't want to work in at that precise moment in time. And then for the next sort of 8 years, whilst I had young children, I was doing bits of consultancy, and then COVID hit and I decided to move my whole family to Wales, which was a bit of a disaster, and moved them all back again about 7 months later. And I've got the six of us in total, and tried to get everyone back into schools, had a breakdown in amongst all of that and long COVID. And at that point, I decided I'd stop my consulting because I needed to sort of stop all the stress. And I'd been thinking about Female Founders Rise, this idea, for such a long time. I'd played around with building communities, and I knew that there was something missing for female founders. I also had huge amounts of experience running businesses and felt that I wasn't using that or helping anyone. I was like, I've spent like 10 years running successful businesses, but I'm not able to impart that information or help to anyone. And I also knew, through the 20 years of working, all these incredible experts and people who are like really, really good, that I could pull together to help founders. And I'd also, in my consultancy work with lots of early stage founders on their marketing and growth, and had seen so many people wasting huge amounts of money, like I'm talking 20, 30, 40, 50 grand sometimes, before they'd come to me on PR agencies or Facebook agencies, and a lot of the time it was just that they hadn't got like a proper strategy or a plan, and they didn't know what they didn't know, because you don't know what you don't know, and someone says, oh, you must do this or you must do that, and you chuck all your money down there. So I knew that there was something that was missing, and I basically set up this little project as a side project. All I did, so anyone who wants to set up a business, you can literally do this, which is I set up a company on LinkedIn, that's free. I set up a Google form, which is free, and I said, I'm doing this. I'm running a community for female founders. Does anyone want to sign up? That basic. Started writing some LinkedIn posts, and over time, people started joining, and then I would talk to them about what they wanted and they needed, and then I would go out to my experts and myself, and I would like host masterclasses and stuff like that. So that's how I got into Female Founders Rise, and that was the very early days when it was very small, like maybe 100 people. We hadn't even run an in-person event. We did 34 in-person events this year, so it's like really gone very busy. And how I got into angel investing is when I sold my business, I had some money and I wanted to do something with it rather than just fritter it away. So I decided I'd buy a house in Wales with the money, and that was a house that I moved my whole family to after lockdown. Luckily, I kept the house in London, and when that didn't work out, I decided I didn't want to keep the house in Wales. It was an extra stress, and this idea of having two houses is ridiculous. I would never recommend it to anyone. I think a lot of founders, they think like when they sell their business and they make money, that's the dream, to have like expensive cars and have two houses and have a holiday home and all these things. And actually, like, that doesn't make you happy, and it's actually a lot of extra stress.
They say more money, more problems, don't they?
Exactly. So sold the house, and I made 80 or 90 grand in profit on the house that I'd bought, and I decided that was like pure profit. There was like, hadn't done anything for it. So almost the same time as doing that, I read these stats that I couldn't believe I didn't know, because I've worked in the ecosystem for so long. 2% of funding was going to women. I was just like, I literally can't believe it. I'm shocked. It's like, how can that be?
Yeah.
You know, like, it should be 50-50, but if it's not 50-50, it could be like 30-70, but like 2%. And I was just, that was just awful. And I was like, I'm going to put that 70 or 80 grand into women-led businesses. And I didn't know how to start. I didn't know how to angel invest. So when you're investing your own money, it's called angel investing. And essentially you find a business that you want to back, and you buy shares, and in return you give money, and in return you get some shares. And I didn't really know, I'm sure we might cover this off, but I didn't really know how to find those businesses. You know, how do you find the good ones? How do you know what to do? And so that was all 2 years ago, and that's when I kind of started my journey of becoming an angel investor.
So yeah, we're going to be going into your story a little later about how you find your deals and how people in this room can find angel investors to get angel investment ready. But I really wanted to dig into a bit of your story, Ambra, because I kind of wanted to dig into how you quit your job, you know, because finding a problem and being like, I'm going to quit, because you're working at Goldman Sachs, I assume was a very comfortable career. And yeah, just share us a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's hard. It's really hard, and it sounds easy to say, oh, I quit my job, I'm building this business. But behind these words, there's so much pressure. So just a little bit about my career. I started investment banking at Goldman, wanted to get some skill set from that role, then went into private equity, I was an investor there in large cap deals in financial services and tech. And I always knew in the back of my mind I wanted to build a business. And then when the why happened, there was a lot of emotions happening at that point as well. Because if you decide to quit your job, it's not just impacting you today, it's going to impact all the people around you, your family. And even if you don't want their support, they will feel liable for you sometimes. And I have a great partner who's supporting me, but I always made it very clear that money was not going to be an issue for him. And so the big thing that people don't talk about is the financial constraints of founding a business. So I had saved quite a bit in those years where I worked in financial institutions. I sat down and I planned a financial model, and I looked at, based on my expenditures, the same way I did that for businesses all the time. I did that on myself. I downloaded my bank statements and I looked at all of my expenditures, and I saw, well, I will have X months of runway if I stop working today. And based on that runway, let's halve it. That's how much time I'm going to give myself to go and run with it. And if it doesn't go well, then I will go and find a job, perhaps. So there's also setting realistic expectations. I told myself, well, I have 1 year. I can go without any salary, and after that year I will look for a job. Because there were a lot of unknowns. I didn't know exactly what I was going to build, right? There's a big moment of scoping. I didn't know who I was going to build it with, if with anyone. And then I had to figure out where to get the money as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important, having a runway, because I think I didn't work for too long, and it meant that I was so stressed when it was coming to money running my business. So it's like really cool that you saved, you put a plan in place, and then got it in. And you raised 1.7 million euros within just a year, which is very, very impressive. And how did you go about doing that?
Yes, so, well, Emmy, you are the marketing queen here. So you'll tell me if I had a good strategy there. But when I quit my job at Eurazeo, I knew I wanted to build something. I actually wanted to keep myself accountable for it. So, you know, when you sign up for a marathon, you tell everyone that you're going to do a marathon. You don't know if you're going to train for it, but you just say it, and then that will push you. So I quit my job, and I posted on LinkedIn that I quit my job and that I was going to build something. And I put a very nice picture of my team.
You already had a team at that point?
My old team, And then we the post just boomed on LinkedIn, and I suddenly had a lot of investors pinging me. Because they actually are filtering on LinkedIn and they look at everyone that's building in stealth mode. Well, I didn't have a deck. I didn't have my ideas clear. So I just picked up a few of those and I said, look, we can chat, but I don't have a deck for you. I'm not raising now. But actually what that did is that I created a FOMO also behind it on, okay, I need to follow this founder's journey. Because what she's talking about is actually quite interesting. So I'm excited to see the deck.
See, there was a lot of personal branding there. Like, that's a lot of confidence to put yourself on LinkedIn.
Yes, absolutely. And that also came from one of the events I went to where Emmy talked about personal brand and, putting yourself out there on LinkedIn. It is scary, but, if something goes wrong, no one looks at the post, that's fine. I mean, people forget. And I think we always need to remind ourselves that people forget.
No one cares that much.
No one cares about the mistakes
crazy,
that you make.
Yes,
absolutely. And one thing I always reminded myself is, if you make a mistake in your job and you feel terrible about it, will your manager actually remember that next week, right? There's just so much going on. So that was the philosophy that I had at the time. And I said, look, I'm going to build this thing. If it doesn't work, it's fine. And that's how we got investors to start with. I never did any investor outreaches, but I would always build a network from there. So if I've met Emmy today and I tell her about the business, I try to get 3 connections from her. And from those 3 connections, I get another 3. And so that's how I started developing my network, actually.
And that just happened now because we were talking and I was like, oh, have you met so-and-so? And we probably talked about 3 potential connections that might be helpful.
And Emmy, I was wondering if you have any tips on personal branding and how we can be developing our network as entrepreneurs to reach investors.
Yeah, and we're actually doing a masterclass on personal branding tomorrow, and it's free, so I don't know if I can get it out to everyone, I will. But so what you were saying is so right, that you just don't know who's watching you, and actually, like, when you make a big, brave announcement like that on LinkedIn, everyone's got your back. Like 99% of people are like, wow, that is so cool. My husband hasn't got a job at the moment, and I keep saying to him, just please post on LinkedIn that you're looking for a job, because it works, because I've seen what happens, but he doesn't want to. But what I would say is, if you can find the courage to, be vulnerable and share the things that maybe you feel uneasy about, 99% of people who don't even know you're going to get behind you, and you won't believe how many people see that content that haven't even liked it or commented, but they'll say something like, I could be at the school gates and someone will be like, oh, how was your trip to Lisbon? And I'd be like, how do you know I went to Lisbon? But they've seen, my post on LinkedIn. So in terms of personal branding, the things that I would say is just get started. So don't, be worried about basically if you do a really bad post, no one sees it because it's really bad. So basically the algorithm doesn't show it to anyone. So it doesn't matter. And if you do a good post, loads of people see it. So either way, it's all fine. I would say the things to think about is, what are you really passionate about? What's your area of expertise? What interests you? And think about maybe 3 or 4 content pillars that you want to write about. So for me, I love talking about female founders. I love talking about entrepreneurship in general. I love talking about well-being, because I had a breakdown and I am now out the other side. And it's very important to me that I share that and all the things that I do. And sometimes I talk about being a mum of 4, and also I love talking about marketing. So those would be my content pillars that I feel very confident talking about. And so think about the things that interest you, and those would be your content pillars, and write content around those. And also remember that you don't have to be the mega expert. Just imagine you're writing for the person who's 6 months behind you. They're going to learn from you. So there's always going to be people ahead of you who are better than you, and there's always going to be people that are behind you who would love to know what you know. And we always underestimate what we know and what other people know. And actually, there'll be loads. You will know things that lots of people will be interested in and would want to know. So even after tonight, after this event, take a photo with a couple of people, post it on LinkedIn, share that you went to the event. You can tag our companies in. We'll engage with it. But it's just getting used to it. It's just getting used to that practice and not being scared to share your voice. I can't wait to see all your posts.
We really want to get into how you found your co-founding team and how you built it. So Ambra, how did you find people to work with you?
Oh, it's very difficult. I mean, I'm very young. I'm very, very young.
26, right?
I'm 27 now. I was 26 when I started building the company. There's a lot of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
You're meeting people who are much older than you. And so when you pitch to them the business or when you hire, well, I was part of hiring processes before, but I never made a hiring decision before. Right. I never had hiring training. I had no idea how to manage people. I had managed analysts and interns before, but not a team. Yeah. And so there's been a lot of learning curve in there. First hiring, like some hiring interviews that didn't go as well as they should have, or maybe I hadn't asked the right questions. Yeah. And so through that, I've learned how to do that. Yeah. But I found actually my co-founder, Max, who's the CEO of the business, through a poker game. I put myself out there. I was going to lots of events at that moment in life. And then what happened is that I went to this VC and founders poker game. I don't know how to play poker. So on my way there, I was just on WikiHow looking at how to play poker. And in those poker tables, I started asking people, look, my ask for tonight is I'm looking for a COO who has health tech experience. And then someone actually walked up to me and said, look, I have the right person for you. It's not that easy usually, right? I've actually spent a lot of time on LinkedIn, on the YC matching platform, meeting people all the time. It's like speed dating. Yeah. And there are some that go through 2-3 meetings, some that don't. But you need to start developing also that gut feeling of, first you get along with that person. Are you able to test their skill set, if that's something that you're looking for? If you want to optimize for that, right, also. In that moment, because I was so young, I just felt like I didn't have all of the skill set I needed to build that business. And maybe I did, maybe I didn't, but also being humble and sitting down and understanding where your skill set ends and where are the gaps to be able to bring your dream to life is very, very important. So I met Max, we went for a coffee, and then we met for coffee again, and then again. And then I went on to Raise, and he quit his job and joined me. And from there, then we actually got some people from Zigo joining us as well, which is one of the unicorn insurtechs. And the moment I had the first person on a payroll, that was insane. Yeah.
And it's crazy how you put yourself out there and went to a poker game, because on LinkedIn, I don't know how many guys see tech poker games for founders. I'm like, do females go to those things?
Oh yeah, we weren't many, I must say. Yes.
So we really hope to provide a better space than a poker game. So it's cool that you still put yourself out there and found someone who knew someone. And Emmie, I really wanted to chat to you. I guess you've seen many pitch decks in your time as an investor. What are the key things in a pitch deck that you think, yes, I want to invest in that founder?
Okay, so I am not a pitch deck expert. I'm not even a VC or an investor expert. And the way that I invest in founders is either through a collective of angel investors, of other investors, where there's someone there who is an expert, who understands that area, and they said, I've met this founder, I only invest in female founders, so she's amazing, she works in whatever space, and I then kind of just go in off the back of that. And I'm doing very small investments. So I did 30 investments and I was done 100K. So on average, it's $3,000 each. Some of them are £1,000. Some of them are like 11 grand. But generally, they're very small investments for an angel investor. And I'm spreading my risk across multiple investments. So for me, the main thing I'm looking for when I meet the founders, if I'm not doing it through a collective, is all about the founder. And actually, 2 of the founders that I invested in came through LinkedIn. So I just saw them posting on LinkedIn. They were very passionate about what they were doing. They seemed to be experts in their space. They were putting themselves out there. And for me, that was like a huge thing. And then I'd have a call with them, and I don't know, it's like for me, it's also very much about trusting my gut and my intuition and thinking, does this woman that I'm speaking to, has she got resilience? That's the big one. Because it's going to fail in a way, and you're going to just keep pivoting until you find the right thing. Everyone always says that. So are they going to be okay with that? And do I think that they're the person to run the business that they say they are? And so pretty much for me, all the investments I've made have been off the back of a 20-minute call. And I know there's lots of angel investors that do huge amounts of due diligence, and maybe that sounds like I'm not very organized about it, but for me, I'm either going with my gut and saying, you sound amazing, I think you've got potential and capability, or I'm going with the collective where there's other people who have much better understanding than I do who said, we're going to back this woman and we think she's great, and I'm like, okay, I'll put a couple of grand in. Yeah.
Brilliant. And the next section of the podcast is called The Reality, because we're going to spill the tea. Don't know if you get that. People normally don't laugh at that joke. But so I've got 2 questions for you, and if you could answer as candidly as possible. What's been the hardest moment for you running your business?
I think it's a lot about people management right now. So one of the reality checks here is that you want to build a business, it's your dream, but what you will end up doing is people management and admin. And I think going through the roller coaster of managing people, because they are going through their own roller coaster. There are some days where I go home and I'm drained in my energy levels. And I don't know how the next day is going to look like, because I depend on these people. The team that we built is people who are much smarter than what me and my co-founder can do, because it's about bringing in that expertise. So I think that's one of the things that I live day in, day out, that can be a bit consuming. But then it's about reminding myself that I am the glue that puts all of them together, and I need to drive that energy, and I need to be there to support them and take the grunt work as well.
And as you mentioned, you're a young founder. How do you attract these more experienced people to your team?
Well, I don't think there's a secret recipe. It really marked me when one of them came to me and said, look, I trust you. And the reality is that sometimes you don't need to oversell yourself. It's just, if it works, it works. And if you built a great business, and if you are selling a dream that other people believe in as well, and you are a good leader, people will follow. And we're not born learned. I've done a big journey in the last 18 months, and I've grown a lot, but it's just making sure that you are growing every day. You have that growth mindset, and people will admire that. And also in being humble and say, look, I don't know this answer. What do you think? So oftentimes the fear there is, well, I don't know the answer to all of these questions, and it's fine. If you admit it, you're actually going already next step, okay, now I need to find an answer for that.
Yeah. Brilliant. And what's been the hardest moment for you in your journey, Emmie?
Gosh, I mean, there's been quite a lot of hard moments, but I think, so very quickly, selling the business was actually quite full on, because when we were selling the business, you can't really tell the staff you're selling because you haven't sold. And I loved my team members, and I looked after them and made sure that I wanted them all to get great jobs and flourish. And then you kind of know the secret that you're trying to sell your business, and you don't know what situations that's going to put them in, and you can't tell them. But inevitably they start sort of getting wind that it's going to happen, and people started leaving, and then you're like, oh my gosh, if everyone leaves, there was 10 of us in the media agency when we were selling it. So if 2 or 3 people leave, you're suddenly that's 30% of the business gone. So I found that very stressful. And then actually what's really interesting, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, but you get a chunk of money in your bank account, and I'm not ungrateful for that. That's brilliant and massive privilege. But actually you're suddenly like lost. You know, you've spent all your life building a business, doing, you know, and it is really hard managing the teams, all of that, but it also gives you joy and a purpose and a reason, and you have that infrastructure, and then the next day it's just gone. You don't have a team, you don't have a purpose, you don't have the company that you used to have. And sometimes I look back, and I mean, I don't regret it, because obviously I'm very happy where I am now, but sometimes I look back and think, if I hadn't sold that, I could have just carried on sort of running that and done other projects on the side. And so with Female Founders Rise, I don't think my plan is I'm going to do that until is my life's work. You know, I will be doing it in my 80s, traveling around the world with my husband, going to see our members all around the world. So I think that was hard. And then I think, but you know, also just selling a business, it's honestly, it's like, so the other hard thing is that you're trying to keep the business going and not tell the team, but also the work to sell your business, the due diligence that they're doing, and these people like coming in and like wanting to know everything about your business is such a distraction that it almost stops you doing the work on the business. And you've got to be really careful, because if it doesn't work out, you suddenly lost your business. And that does happen to a lot of people. They get distracted a bit, like when you're trying to raise money. And I think the other thing was obviously, you know, having a breakdown and long COVID, kind of just so awful, and I lost myself and my mental and physical well-being, and I lost my confidence, and I lost my ability to do what I love and what makes me happy, which was to do the work I love. So that's, you know, another core focus for me, is just making sure that and all founders kind of overdo it, because we're so passionate about what we're doing, and I'm sure, you know, we work ourselves so hard because we're so driven to create change, and it's just making sure that, you know, we keep those boundaries.
And actually, you mentioned something, which is losing confidence, and I think that happens a lot during the founding journey, and that's one of the hard realities of it in finding that drive again. You may have a day where a big customer says yes. And you may have another day where someone just doesn't care about what you're building and you wanted them to say yes so badly. And you start questioning, is this the right thing? Those moments actually are the hardest ones, where you don't have clarity because you're so emotionally destroyed by what just happened. And I think taking a step back, sleeping on it and realizing, okay, let's dissect the feedback now. Let's put in the bigger context and actually analyzing a bit the data of understanding, okay, if I had 100 calls, how many were yeses, how many were nos? What are the common patterns, rather than being destroyed on the spot? But another hard thing is that you just don't have the time to reflect on things oftentimes.
And also we've got that kind of negativity bias, haven't we? So one of my advisors always said, don't confuse the tree with the whole forest. So like someone could give me us a bad review, or someone could say something bad on LinkedIn, and that could almost like ruin my whole day, and I forget all the hundreds of emails and messages and nice positive comments I've had, because you can get like, and I think it's really hard as well being a founder, because it is a very different journey to anyone who's working in a business. And so that's why like communities are so important, because you can meet other people who understand those ups and downs and, you know, can be with you on the journey.
And community, I agree with you, is so important. Both Emmie and I have communities that you can join afterwards, like WhatsApp chats, and hopefully running more events for you guys to meet people. But I wanted to have a Q&A and have an open discussion. So is there any questions for Amber and Emmie? And maybe anything you want to share. Maybe if you've got a business, maybe you want to get some feedback. Feel free. This is like an open space to chat.
Hi, I'm Namoya, co-founder of Health Talks, and we've just brought on a team. And Amber, you spoke about people management and knowing your own limitations, and I feel like that's what I'm feeling now. What would you say is your top tips on converting from just being this visionary who's able to just stay up all night and get the things done to now actually working with a team?
There's been a big step for me in trusting the team, because oftentimes you as the leader and you as the founder, you have a good vision for it. You know exactly how you want it, every single detail of it. but if you bring on a team, and if you call them team and not just a contractor or someone that is executing things for you, then the job there is actually to just transmit that message and trust them to run with it. So actually then at that moment I stopped and I asked myself, do I trust them? And second, am I doing a good enough job in transmitting that message? Because if I'm not doing that well, then of course the outputs won't be what I like. And then letting that run for a bit, testing it. If the results aren't good, then have a discussion, understand whether there's a communication issue, or there's actually a big misalignment, or there's a skill set issue. But if they do deliver, then you will build that trust. And then you will be able to run with it. But I've also done a big journey in developing my managerial skills as well. So we were talking about it with you earlier, but I have a coach. That's an investment that I did early on in developing my personal skill set, knowing what are my soft skills goals as well, and not just hammering down on that's the vision I want to build. But if you cannot bring the team with you, then that vision won't come true.
There's two left, we'll take two.
Mine is a very quick one.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Emmie Faust. And I wanted to ask about the cap table. Is there a logistical difference between having your name on the cap table versus your name within the SPV?
I don't know. I think probably I'm on Companies House. I imagine there's some kind of way that, but for me, what happens when you're on an SPV is that it's kind of done through a company that organises that, and a person or a nominee or whatever it is called is put on the cap table representing that wrapped up. So as far as I know, it doesn't make any difference to me. I think, actually sometimes I don't want my name to be like all over the internet saying I've invested in people. But I don't think it makes a huge difference. I actually don't know though. Good question.
Sometimes it is about marketing as well. So when you go into the next round and other investors are doing due diligence, they will ask for your previous cap table, and then they will read all of the names that are on there. So if an important name is grouped into an SPV, then they won't see it. But if you advertise it in PR, that's fine. So they will know.
Because I've tried to do diligence on other companies before buying a Company's House, and I guess you just don't know whether or not it's by an SPV versus
you would
exactly.
One. It's kind of hard to know.
Ask.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And final question.
Hi, yes, I'm Tanya. I lead marketing and partnerships at a mental health tech company. Keeping to that theme of mental health, since all three of you are on the other side of the table, all three of you are high performers, and at a time when you started your company, you did not have a team. So how did you keep your mental health in check while keeping your work life also in check before you had a team you could delegate some tasks to?
And also when you have a team, that comes with additional challenges, like you said. I mean, actually sometimes much more stressful.
The mental health is better.
Almost like with Female Founders Rise, I kind of want to keep it small, because the responsibility of having a team and making payroll and making sure they're happy and they've had their reviews and they've got their, you're supporting them and doing what they want in the world. Very quickly, the things that I do, which I did today and yesterday actually, because I definitely needed it, I do hot yoga. I do meditation. I did sound bath at the weekend. I did chanting at the weekend, which I've never done before. Wow. I did. I do a lot of walking. I try and get to bed. This sounds like I'm a perfect person. I definitely am not. But I try and get to bed at 10:30, because I know if I go to bed at 10:30, then I wake up and I've had a good night's sleep. That makes all the difference. So. And these are all things, I'm 46 now. So obviously when I was 25 running my business, we were out all night partying, getting home really late, hungover every day, definitely wasn't doing any of that. But I think I now see as I'm older, and it's much harder to do those things and feel fine. I can just really tell the difference. And boundaries is my biggest thing. So I used to say yes to everything. I'm such a people pleaser. I want to help everyone, want to help more women. But as I get more and more people in the community, everyone wants, me to invest an hour of my time. I say no to everyone. That's because it's the only fair thing to do. And I've got 8,000 people in the community that I'm helping. And so I think as women, I like to say as women, I feel like as women, we really do want to help a lot of people in general. And, we've got all these additional, the load, the invisible load, we're generally the ones doing a lot of the work at home and all those other things. So setting boundaries has to be done.
Yeah.
I'm grateful you said yes to this event, though.
Oh, yeah. No, I did, yeah. It's my third this week, so I was like, that's it. I'm not doing any more.
I think in the early days, it's very different from today. And they, as Emmie said, they both come with challenges. But there are 3 key things to me in the early days. One, which is, as Emmie said, boundaries, and making sure that you are taking care of yourself in all fronts. So I used to work out a lot. I do a lot less now because we've been very busy. It's never an excuse, actually. We should always work out. But at that time, it just gave me consistency with something, because your whole world is just a mess, right? So having some stable things in your routine is very important. The second one is community. I was very lucky that I had a friend that wanted to quit her job at the same time as me. And what we did is that every day we were meeting up together at 9 a.m. and we were working from each other's homes. Nice. And yeah, I was very, very lucky to do that, because I need someone to bounce the ball with sometimes, and that unlocked a lot of the thinking, and it gave me courage as well. And the third one is mentorship. So having, and doesn't have to be formal mentorship, but I knew people that, as Emmie said, are 6 months ahead of you or 1 year ahead of you, that I could speak to and I can relate to. At that moment, I had a lot of questions about how do I make SCIS work, and for some reason it's so time consuming, and the internet is never so clear about it, so you always ask someone. Or how did you create your website? What tools did you use? Do you want to come to this event with me? Those were the 3 main things that I had. And now it's about delegating and making sure that I nurture that from my side as well, and then still keeping those boundaries, because there's a lot more coming in now. I used to say yes all the time when I was building, and that unlocked a lot of doors. Now there's a lot more no's, but people should always ask, and worst case scenario, do get a no, but they will know you already.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
Sorry, I know it's
yeah. This sounds really strange, but I really like to sing. So I love singing. I feel like it boosts my mental health. Got Christmas carols tomorrow, so really excited for that. Yeah.
When and where?
It's actually in Green Park. It's called Christchurch. So I'm going to be singing in the choir. So that keeps me,
brilliant,
kind of happy, and after all the stress of work. And even though work is stressful, I still really love it. So actually, I feel very privileged. And yeah, that's how I try to keep my mental health in check. And I also sleep quite a lot as well. I'm a big sleeper.
Yeah, we were speaking about it. I think it's very important.
Sleep is the most important thing, because you can't function if you haven't slept.
Yeah. Like people are like, oh, I did all-nighters. I was like, nah, that's
not
not me. Yeah. I really want to ask you, what's the best piece of business advice you've ever received that you could share with the audience?
I will let Emmie start first.
I would say the best piece of business advice I ever received, this lady didn't know that she was giving me business advice. It was my first boss, and she treated her team so incredibly well. We were doing some like promotional work, and we used to be working around the country, and she'd put us up in the most amazing hotels and take us out for like incredible dinners. And I was like at university. She paid us really well. So we were really well paid. We'd be put up in amazing hotels. We'd go out for really nice dinners with her. And she could have like put us up in Premier Inn or whatever, but she didn't. She'd always put us up in the same hotels as her, and take us out to places for dinner that I could never afford, and pay us really well. And, she was young. She had a little baby at the time and was incredibly successful and doing really well. And I think that just gave me a really good understanding of like how I just saw her, how she was. So then when I set up my business at 26 or 25, it was only a couple of years later, I was just like, that was so important to me, like the way that I looked after the team. We basically had this thing in place where once we sort of covered all our costs and stuff, we shared 25% of the profits over that amount with our team, and like lots of things like that. So it wasn't, she didn't actually tell me anything, and she probably doesn't even know, but it was watching her doing and realizing that she's built this amazingly successful business by being nice and generous.
Yeah.
And not enough people are doing that.
It's great to have role models as well.
Exactly.
I think for me the best piece of business advice was when I went into investment banking. There was a big training. It's very intense. People are high performers. And I was told, ask all of your stupid questions up front. Don't ever go away and think about it and then actually you don't understand it, and then you come back and you ask again and you ask again. So I now never pretend that I understand something. If I don't understand it, I will just ask. And that's how I absorb information. And the more information I absorb, the better I'll become next time around. And I always tell that to all the people who are just going into the workforce. Just ask all of your questions up front. Don't be shy about it. Once you've done that, and actually if it's not clear in the answer, ask. Just continue. Or I was on a call, it was all these technical terminologies, I just wrote them down. I phoned the person just above me and I said, what does this mean and what does that mean? And sometimes I even misspelled it. I had no idea how to write certain words, and that's how I started learning.
Fantastic. And final question just to round off the podcast, because being a female founder, there's a lot of doom and gloom, how little females raise. But if you could share with us, what's the best thing about being an entrepreneur?
I love waking up every day thinking that I'm making the impact of something that I really, really care. And I never had this feeling where I would actually wake up and smile going to work. And also having so many people believing in this as well. The number of LinkedIn messages I get saying, I love what you're building. I am so grateful you're doing this. I wish I had that back in time. It's so energizing.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing, to wake up and just be happy and loving what you're doing. I mean, the first business I set up, I didn't love that at all, but I think...
that story's on a previous podcast.
Exactly. But yeah, I think it's that. I think, you get to choose your destiny. You're kind of in control. Like when you work for someone else, you're not. You're fulfilling their vision and their mission. And when you're doing your own thing, you've got the vision of what you want to see in the world and you're working towards that, and it's really fulfilling.
Brilliant.
Very hard work, but very fulfilling.
Thank you so much, guys. Weren't they brilliant? Yeah.